The very principle of sculpture is what I find fascinating. I mean, it's the fact that you look at things and you have an emotion, you have an idea. That's all there is to it. In the front room, there's a good representation of the work that I've been making using kind of mixing geometries with drawing. I was thinking about the Janus masks, and I just simply made these elliptical Janus masks and slipped them into one another. There's not much left of the mask because they detract and negate each other, but I thought it gave almost minimal natural quality to the volume that I've made. And these volumes, they're made separately from one another, and then they're both they're pushed into one another. The integers, which have a kind of figurative base. What you can't work out in your own mind is the intersection between one volume and the other. And I think that's what gives the work this incredible smooth surfaces with these intersections of lines. And that is the kind that makes it, for me, and it had a great fascination. And I put in that room as well the Justine, because the Justine is a very different work. But that work started in a sense 8 years ago, where I was making columnar works, which the Justine is three different elliptical columns that are then sort of pressed into one another to make that form. And what comes out of it is a very, very, I think, very surprisingly sensuous figurative work. In the next room, in the small space, one is a very complicated work, which almost becomes, one could say it's Baroque, where one complicated column or figure is kind of reacting with another. You get a very dynamic and very complicated picture out of that. The other two works in that room, these are hollow heads. They are compound elliptical volumes, if you like, a physical head, the physicality of the head. It's also the negative volume of the head. Then they're interjected into each other. It is a little bit like having a conversation with someone. It's little bits of looking at people, a little bit of hearing them, a little bit of thought, a little bit of imagination, a little bit of fantasy, whatever it is. So you have this kind of thing going on in one work. They're very challenging to make, and maybe even a little bit of challenging to even look at. I've only ever been interested in how does material affect me. We have a range of emotions in a range of materials and forms that we're very, very familiar with and are somewhat repetitive and maybe not even that interesting to us. But sculpture is a source of new forms. And as soon as you have new forms, you have the possibility of a new idea or a new thought. You get a block of material, there's infinite number of things you can make with that. I wanted to make out of this very strong material something that didn't have any industrial format. So I made the work in polyurethane blocks, cutting it out, carving it, gluing it together. It allowed me to be very flexible, be very precise about it. So I finally arrived at a form I felt was where I wanted to go to. They stand very independent. They're just made of corten steel at least with some nickel and some chrome in it, so it's a quite resistant material. And then there's smaller versions. They're slightly different from the bigger ones, and they are made in stainless steel. It's work I've never exhibited before, and it's also has a kind of a sense and a feeling that I've not had in my exhibitions in the past. Those works, which I call dream sleepers, an African headrest. Africans take nature and make it a very beautiful and simple functioning form for them, just so their heads are not on the ground. It looks super organic. It's like the sort of sequence of dreams, thoughts going up on one another. I've been making sculpture for well over 50 years, and I've never ceased to be amazed by the possibilities that are there.